Some crimes leave behind more than victims. They leave secrets, unanswered questions, and mysteries that refuse to disappear. Welcome to Dark Case Diaries. Join us as we uncover true crime stories, shocking investigations, and the hidden truths behind some of the world's most fascinating cases. Let's begin.
So today, we're going to be diving into 3 incredibly intricate cases that absolutely prove that old saying. You know the one, reality is stranger than fiction? And listen, these aren't your standard procedural cases. Oh no, these are deep, complex webs filled with psychological twists that you literally will never see coming. We're going to walk through these stories step by step together, unpacking the completely unbelievable reality behind these crimes.
I hope you die of grief, boss. Your money won't bring back your son. Just let those words sink in for a second. This chilling threat was actually delivered to a grieving family, and it immediately plunged them into this dark, mystery-driven atmosphere that would end up haunting an entire nation for decades.
It really forces us to ask a deeply uncomfortable question. How well do you truly know the people around you? I mean, really know them. In this explainer, we're going to peel back the surface of these 3 unbelievable stories. We'll start with exactly what the world saw, and then slowly uncover the chilling truths that were hiding right out of sight the whole time.
All right, let's jump right into Case 1, The Secret of Sharon Marshall, a bright future derailed by a deadly hit-and-run.
So on the surface, Sharon Marshall was brilliant. I mean, she was a high school ROTC student with a full-ride aerospace engineering scholarship to Georgia Tech. But after a hidden teen pregnancy, she gave her baby up, lost her scholarship, and ended up moving to Tampa, Florida with a man named Franklin Delano Floyd. She started working as an exotic dancer and had a son named Michael. And guys, the anomalies surrounding them were just staggering. In 1989, Sharon's friend Cheryl vanished right after Frank violently attacked her, leaving behind an abandoned Corvette. Then, just a year later, in 1990, Sharon actually died in a super suspicious hit-and-run. Fast forward to 1994, Frank, who by this point had lost custody of Michael, shows up at Michael's school, literally ties the principal to a tree, and abducts the boy at gunpoint.
Frank's whole web of lies finally started to unravel when he tried to claim an $80,000 life insurance policy on Sharon. Why? Because it forced him to use his real name. And man, this exposed a terrifying criminal history. Back in 1962, he abducted a 4-year-old, escaped a mental hospital, and robbed a bank. In 72, he skipped federal bail for another abduction attempt. By 94, when he was finally captured in Kentucky for kidnapping Michael, well, Michael was nowhere to be found. But the absolute grimmest discovery came in 1995. A mechanic in Kansas bought this abandoned truck at an auction and found an envelope stuffed with 97 photos of beaten, bound women. And one of those women had a cheekbone wound that perfectly matched skeletal remains found down in Florida. Remains that actually belonged to Sharon's missing friend, Cheryl Comesso.
Okay, let's dive into this next part. Because while Frank was sentenced to death for Cheryl's murder, investigators found something else in those 97 photographs. There were older images of a young girl being assaulted by Frank. And it led investigators to a massive revelation in 2014 that finally answered the terrifying question, but who was Sharon Marshall really? This is where the story takes its ultimate, devastating twist. So, in the 1970s, while he was on the run, Frank married a woman named Sandy Chipman. When Sandy had to serve 30 days in jail for passing bad checks, Frank basically emptied the house and kidnapped her 4 children. He split up the younger ones, but kept the oldest daughter, Suzanne Savarkis, and raised her under all these aliases, eventually landing on the name Sharon Marshall. Yes, the brilliant young woman, dreaming of going to NASA, was actually Frank's kidnapped stepdaughter. He raised her, assaulted her, married her, and almost certainly killed her. Frank actually later confessed that after abducting young Michael, he shot him, and the poor boy's body was likely eaten by wild hogs off Interstate 35. I mean, it's just a level of darkness that completely defies belief.
Moving right along to our second case, the Crow's Deadly Revenge. A wealthy family terrorized from within. Jean-Marie and Christine Villemin were a successful, totally happy family living in France who were tormented by anonymous threats for 4 whole years. Then, on October 16, 1984, their 4-year-old son Gregory was snatched right from his front garden. Soon after, his uncle received this absolutely terrifying call. "I've kidnapped the boy, I've strangled him, and I've thrown him in the River Valone. I have my revenge." The caller became known as the Crow. And tragically, Gregory's body was discovered later that exact same day in the river, drowned, his hands and feet bound, with his little wool hat pulled down over his face.
What followed all this was just a chaotic juxtaposition of flimsy evidence and misdirected justice that completely, utterly destroy the family. First, Jean-Marie's cousin, Bernard LaRoche, was arrested. This was based on his 15-year-old sister-in-law's statement, but then he was freed when she recanted. Then, incredibly, handwriting experts accused the grieving mother, Christine. Pushed completely past the breaking point, Jean-Marie tracked down his cousin and shot him dead, which earned him a 5-year prison sentence. Meanwhile, Christine, who was actually pregnant with twins at the time, was formally charged with her own son's murder. She went on a brutal hunger strike to protest her innocence, tragically miscarrying one of the babies, before finally being cleared of all charges in 1993.
33. That is the tragic scale of this unsolved mystery in years. 33 years after Gregory's murder, the immense pressure and intense public criticism caused the original magistrate of the case, Jean-Michel Lambert, to actually take his own life. And even when the case was reopened in 2017 and several extended family members were arrested, well, they all yielded absolutely zero convictions.
So the crucial question is, where does this leave us today? Well, in 2020, the case reopened once again, but this time utilizing a brand new technology called stylometrics. It basically analyzes the specific style, syntax, and phrasing in the Crow's letters. And this tech is finally offering a glimmer of hope, pointing to a new, unnamed suspect driven by intense family jealousy. It really asks us to consider just how destructive the power of envy within a family can truly be.
All right, that brings us to our third and final case. The impossible imposter. A missing boy returns, but something is wrong.
Back in 1994, Nicholas Barclay, a troubled 13-year-old from Texas who had ADD and unsterilized needle tattoos, just vanished. This was right after his older brother Jason refused to pick him up from a basketball game. Then, what seemed like a surface miracle occurred. In 1997, 3 years later, the family got a notification that Nicholas had been found alive in Linares, Spain. He claimed a child trafficking ring had kidnapped him, moved him to Europe, tortured him, and forced him to speak only French. His older sister, Carrie, flew straight to Spain. When she met him, he was wearing a baseball hat and sunglasses, seemingly afraid. Yet, after he somehow passed a test identifying family members in photographs, Carrie accepted him and she brought him all the way home to Texas. But guys, this brings us to a glaring question, one that I really want you to think about as we look at the facts here. How does a missing child change his eye color? The family welcomed him back into their home, sure, but there were glaring, completely impossible anomalies that they chose to just completely ignore.
And this brilliantly illustrates what I mean, because the physical contradictions were literally impossible. The real Nicholas vanished at 13. He had blonde hair and blue eyes. The found Nicholas was clearly an adult, later proven to be 23 years old, with dark hair, brown eyes, and a very heavy French accent. When questioned about this, the imposter actually claimed his captors had conducted experiments on him to permanently alter his eye and hair color to hide his identity. I mean, come on.
500. Let me explain. A private investigator who was working with a documentary film crew became highly suspicious of all this. He took photos of the boy's ears and compared them to childhood photos of Nicholas. And here's the thing, ears do not change shape as we age. And these, they did not match at all. He took this straight to the FBI, who ran DNA and fingerprints, revealing a massive twist. This wasn't Nicholas. It was actually a 23-year-old French con artist named Frédéric Bourdin, known as the Chameleon, a man who possessed over 500 fake identities across Europe. Now, we've got to look at the chilling theories laid out by both the private investigator and Frédéric Bourdin himself regarding the family's incredibly suspicious behavior. Bourdin was actually baffled that they accepted him. He claimed Carrie fed him the family knowledge he needed to pass those police photo tests in Spain. And then there's the older brother. When Bourdin arrived in Texas, Jason never even pretended to accept him. His only words to Frederick were, literally, good luck. This cast a real dark new light on a strange 911 call Jason had made 3 months after Nicholas vanished, claiming his brother was breaking into the garage. But the police found zero evidence of a break-in. It heavily suggests the family blindly accepted these impossible physical changes just to close the missing persons case.
Which leads us to our final, highly provocative thought. Did the Barclay family use an imposter to cover up a murder? The private investigator heavily suspected that Jason, or maybe someone else in the family, was responsible for Nicholas's death, and that they welcomed the con artist because he was the perfect alibi. Tragically, before Jason could ever be formally investigated, he died of a cocaine overdose. The true fate of Nicholas Barclay, much like the identity of the Crow and the horrific origin of Sharon Marshall's nightmare, remains one of the incredibly twisted, completely unsolved realities of true crime. It really leaves us to wonder, what secrets are hiding right in plain sight? Thank you so much for exploring these cases with me, and definitely keep questioning the world around you.
And that's the story behind this shocking case. What do you think really happened? Was justice served, or are there still unanswered questions waiting to be solved? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this investigation, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new case from Dark Case Diaries. Until next time, stay curious, stay alert, and remember, every case has a secret. Thanks for watching.